Hey all, Happy New Year. Welcome to my guest room here. Thank you to Michael Palmisano and the entire Guitar Gate community. One of my little cover vids recently got a little attention. Um, you all put some really nice comments on my YouTube page and underneath the video. And so one of the folks in the community, one of the members, and actually one of the moderators had requested a react to this video. The song is Long as I Can See the Lights, a CCR song. I figured I probably wouldn't get a react since it was already a spotlight, so I thought maybe I'd try and pay it forward and try my hand at a little tutorial here. So I'm gonna run through this tune, and I don't know if anybody will watch this or not, but I'll take you through the chords first, and then get into the solo a little bit, and do my best to hash my way and fumble through it. So, songs in G major, all really simple, straightforward, straight up G major first position chords, if that's what you choose to play. And it makes it really nice for practicing your soloing over. So we'll get into that in a second. So the song starts out on the root. In the intro, there's just two chords, so it starts on that root, and then it goes up to the fourth, this C, the four chord. And I like to play it with that G in the bass. So the G is the fifth of the C chord, which makes it the second inversion, if I'm understanding things correctly. So it starts out, and I like to hammer on to that second and fourth string. So you're coming from the B to the C here, up to the root, seventh up to the root, and then from the D to the E here. So the second to the third interval on that C chord. Couple times, and then we'll get into the verse. Starts on the root. Leave a candle up to the 5 chord, that D. In the window, back to the G. Hammer on again. Those strings again. Then you'll come down to the minor sixth here, the E minor. 'Cause I feel it moving on. Back to the root. Into the 5, the D. Back to the root, the G, and I'm gone to the D, the 5 chord, and then here's where it gets interesting. You come to that 4 chord, which is a C, but I like to add this B flat in there, which creates a dominant 7 chord, if I'm understanding it correctly. So normally your root's here, so you drop down a half step to find that 7th interval. Drop that a half step, it becomes a dominant 7. And again, comments, correct me if I'm wrong. But that just gives it a bluesy feel, and that's definitely in the original version of this song. I listened to a few versions of this before I did the video, and then just picked out what I like to hear. But I know that chord caught my ear. And as Michael says, when you hear something that makes you feel something, stop, listen to it, figure out what it is. And so that definitely caught my ear, and I went back and figured out what that was. So I really dig that chord, and I'll use it again in a little later. And then back to the G. Long as I, to the 5 chord, the D, see the light. Then in between verses, it goes from this 4-5-1 transition. But I like to add those inversions into that. So I'll play it, that C, again, with the G in the bass. And then I'll slide that up so that it's a D, a second inversion of the D chord, with the A in the bass, and also leaving this this G string open, which is, I believe, that's the 4th of that D chord, right? So it gives it kind of a suspended feel. Then we go into the second verse, which is very similar with a couple of minor changes. So pack my bags to the 5 chord, the D, let's get moving, and back to the 1, hammer on. That E minor, and now instead of going to the G, we're going to go to the B minor, which is the minor 3rd in the key of G, which is also the relative minor of this D chord here, the 5 chord that we're going to go to. So we're going to transition to that 5 chord via its relative minor, B minor. All right, so and then closest moves D would be right here, but I am going to play the dominant 7 of the D chord. Whoops, except without that first string, without the open E. So minor 3rd, dominant 7 on the 5th, or the D. All right. To the 5 chord, and then back to that C that we like so much, that C dominant 7. As long as I am the G to the D and see the line. So that's the whole rhythm part. That's I will play you know, the first verse the same on the last verse, and then in between I'll play it with that B minor added in, and then that D with the dominant 7. So that takes us to the solo part. The solo for this, much like my playing, is very simple. It is G major pentatonic all the way. There are only 2 notes in the entire solo that are not in that G major pentatonic scale. So it's going to be predominantly this this position 1 of your G major pentatonic scale. So that would be your C shape and the caged system up here. So there's your chord shape, your octave, your pentatonic scale. And then I will also borrow from position 5 on this. I'm going to speak in intervals because I really confuse myself once I start picking out specific notes. But so in your pentatonic scale, 1, 2, 3 in position 1. But if I drop backwards, 3, 2, 1, that puts me down here in position 5. So I will never play this chord in this manner because it's too hard for my fingers to do it. But there's chord shape, octave, pentatonic scale, and I like switching back in between these positions because I like to find those nice whole steps. I like to slide a lot. It gives me time to think. And it lets you play longitudinally up and down the neck, so I think it's a pretty fun way to go. So I'll switch back and forth between those positions a lot. So starts out on that root, and so for the beginning of the solo in position 1 here, I slide up to the 3rd here, and then to the 5th, and then hit that 5th again as we're transitioning to that 5 chord, the D chord. So the 5th of your G major pentatonic scale is also the root of that D, of your 5 chord. So it gives you a transition into that next chord. And then we're going to transition back to the G. So that's just 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, sliding back down into position 5 there. All right. So next we're going to slide up back to the G, and then as we're transitioning to this minor 6th, that would be the position 4, minor 6 down here, but we've also got up here position 2, which is conveniently located closest moves with my position 1 G chord. So you've got your position 1 G, your position 2 E minor here. And also convenient, they have the same pentatonic scale because the E minor is the relative minor of the G. So anyway, as I'm transitioning from that G to the E minor, I slide up again to that 3rd of the G major pentatonic scale. So 3, 5, root. And what this is actually is just an arpeggio of the first inversion of that G major chord in that position. But also all of these notes are in your E minor pentatonic scale. So as we land on this root of your G major scale, that also is your minor third of your E minor. And as Michael preaches, that third determines chord function. So when we're making these changes, we want to hit those notes that make us realize that there's been a change. We're on a different chord. So I slid up into that minor third on that E minor to tell us that we're at the E minor. And then here comes the first note that is not in the G major pentatonic scale. I drop back a half step. And this would be the seventh of your G major scale, but also, and it's not in the G major pentatonic scale, so it sounds different. It's a new note, and it also is the fifth of your B minor, which is the next chord that we land on. So we drop down to that, and then the next chord we head up to is our fifth, so it's the D chord again. So I'm going to walk up to that by heading up to the root of our G major pentatonic scale again, and then coming up here, which would be in the second or the ninth as we're climbing the ladder, I guess. So as we're getting into that D chord, we hit this note here. And what note is that in our D chord? It's the fifth in our D chord. So we're landing on the fifth of our D chord. And then this part gets a little more interesting. I add in the only other note in the solo that is not in the G major pentatonic scale. So I come up to the sixth, the root, the ninth, and then push up on that ninth, which normally we would go to the major third, right? But here we push through that ninth and we go up into the minor third. So it gives it a little more soul. And I can't take credit for that. That's all Fogarty. This is part of the melody. I laid heavily on the melody for the solo, so it's not super original. But for me, it's exciting because I'm new at this and I'm able to kind of sort things out and make some things happen and sound okay. So anyway, push up to that minor third and it gives it a little soul. And then as we're coming into this dominant 7/4 chord, I do this little hammer-on trick where we land on this note right here. And again, as we're going into that C chord, this happens to be the third of our C major chord. So, again, finding those thirds that determine chord function is what we're shooting for, or at least what I was shooting for there. And then we resolve via the D chord back to the root. So what I'm doing there is coming up the pentatonic scale straight up, 6, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, hammer on 5, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 6, 1. And that's it. That's the whole thing. So it was pretty fun for me to mess around with, just putting that track on instead of using the looping pedal. Looping pedal is really good for getting your rhythm figured out and trying to stay in the pocket. But it's also fun sometimes just to put a track on from a song. So I made a track for that tune and just practiced my lead over the top of it. So that's the story behind that vid. And if anybody has got to this point and is still watching, I hope you got something out of this and may have been inspired to mess around with some stuff yourself. So thank you, Michael Palmisano. Thank you to all of the Guitar-Gate folks for being such an awesome crowd that is always supportive and eager to share their favorite music and their progress. And I don't know, I just couldn't be happier to have discovered this this source of inspiration. So Happy New Year cheers, and as Michael says, I guess keep it in your hands, right? Cheers.